welcome to our SEL performance-based assessment. Design cohort showcase. Boy, that's a mouthful. I am Ginger Reynolds from Education Systems Center, and this is my second time through watching Karen do her amazing work and also getting to see all of the really fascinating and innovative performance-based assessments that you all have come up with, and I'm again so pleased to be able to be a part of it. I wonder if, let's see. So maybe Karen, you could introduce yourself, and then Sanjanita, and we'll move forward. Oh, still muted.
Okay, now I think you can hear me.
Perfect.
Okay, sorry. That's DOK1, by the way, turning on the mute button. So this is the fourth year I've been involved with cohorts from this group, so it's been interesting. We've made a few changes each time, but the results are always wonderful to see. I'll pass it on to Sanjanita.
Thank you, Karen and Ginger. I'm Sanjanita Moore. I'm the CBE SEL specialist for Chicago Public Schools. This was my first time working with Dr. Karen and Ginger as part of this cohort, and it's just been a phenomenal experience working with all of our CPS partners, our partners from Round Lake and from Ridgewood. So thank you, everyone.
Terrific. So I will tell you a little bit about what we're going to do today and then turn it over to the rest of the folks. Today is a showcase of the products of the performance-based assessments that lots of folks have been working on the last few months. It's also a chance to share innovation and learning. We hope that you all will learn from each other, and some good questions will bubble up, some good thoughts. We hope it will inspire you to design your own assessments that address especially real world inequities and that really connect with students, hoping that this will not just be a time to listen to what everybody's done, but also to engage. So please have that in mind as your framework. Feel free to use the chat. Feel free to take yourself off mute if you have a question. We'd like it to be just a very interactive and engaging time. So for our icebreaker, it would be great if you could share in the chat what was the most interesting work, task, project that you did this year. What did you learn and what made it meaningful? So if you could give that a thought for a minute, share your responses in the chat, and we can go through them a little bit.
And as always, keep your eyes on your own paper.
No copying.
Right.
I think I can share one of the most interesting things that I've been working on is a math badging initiative. And what I've learned, what has made it most interesting, to be honest, is that I was interested in it and its potential before I even started. And so I already had a scaffold to engage with it. But then what I learned was watching the people who were working within it work with each other, how just terrific it was to see them dig in. And what I learned is sometimes all you need to do is set the stage, right? And people will do the learning on their own. So let's see, we've got rubrics. Absolutely wonderful. I think Karen is all about the rubrics too, and how important those are. So, oh yeah, there we go, from Adam too. Terrific. Let's see, Sanjanita, connecting with teachers, and that's sort of what I was saying too, for sure. Working with a teacher who embedded tabletop role-playing games. Oh, Dungeons and Dragons. Adam, that sounds pretty darn cool. and starting to get to my latest personal rabbit hole is AI and all of the potential and all of the pitfalls that it encompasses, and that's sort of getting to all of that too. It's all coming. Lauren onboarding a new management platform that promotes CBE and adaptive pacing. Sorry, yeah, Dungeons and Dragons. Angelique wrote a framework for the district. Sorry, great. Some really good stuff in there. Lori launching an internship program. Great. Michael, you did a PBA trial. Love to hear about that in a bit. Terrific. So let's see. We'll move on, but please feel free to continue to add your ideas in the chat. And I think I'll turn it over to Karen.
Thank you, Ginger. And thanks everybody for sharing. I think you'll notice that what people were putting in the chat were things that are meaningful because they had a connection to it. It was of interest to them. When your interest is sustained, you don't mind putting in time and effort or struggling a little bit. So that's good to see. We used a book that I was a co-author on to guide our work, mainly chapter 3, where it walks you through how to develop a performance assessment, how to develop rubrics, how to develop performance scales, and used examples. This book actually was a result from the first year's cohort when there wasn't a book. And I believe that we had to pull these ideas together in a concise way. So it was kind of a win-win for the project to continue and to get the work out there, which Adam had said he's even used this book in his work in Kentucky. So that's always nice to see when, when it has a useful shelf life. Can we go to the next slide, please? So Sanjanita, do you want to just explain how this was set up? You can kind of walk them through this slide.
Yes, so essentially we wanted to create a virtual series of 7 sessions plus the showcase. And as Karen talked about, with the deeper competency-based learning as kind of the grounding piece, and really looking for ways to help teachers think about maybe some things they've already been working on, but how to craft that into a performance-based assessment using these key tools to help them make it more student-centered, really placing emphasis on student voice and choice while aligning it to the DOKs and using a lot of the kind of protocols and tools that Karen introduced to us. And so in conjunction with that, as you see from the 3 of us here, it's a unique partnership between Dr. Karen, Ginger representing NIU, and CPS. And so we were able to offer stipends for teachers from the CBE team and CPS, as well as Ginger and NIU working to offer the ISB micro-credential as well. So it's a very unique opportunity that is particular to CBE.
And I'll jump in and just say that Sanjanita also and Karen were very generous in allowing some other folks from around the state to also be a part of it. And so really appreciate you all putting that extra time in to allow some cross collaboration with other districts, and think it was all the much better for that. So yes. Thanks you both. Shout out to Round Lake and Ridgewood.
Yeah, so you'll see teachers from different schools, different content areas. You'll see general educators, you'll see special educators. So it was a really nice mix. So thank you for mentioning that. Next slide. So just to give you a little bit of a background on how we approach this for people who were not part of the project, just very quickly, we wanted to integrate the theme of social justice in this work. And so we started with a Jamboard and people just reacting to what they thought social justice looked like in their teaching practice and in student learning. And so as you hear the examples, listen for that in the student voice, because there are many themes related to social justice. And so teachers thought long and hard about, well, what would the connection be? But that was the jumping off point for our work. And then if we go to the next slide. Then we talked about transfer of learning, because this was an opportunity to say, we have rigorous performance tasks, and I will identify both some content from the academic side and what CPS calls their adaptive competencies. These used to be called 21st century skills. Different places call them different things, but we're talking about collaboration, self-direction, communication, creative problem solving, critical thinking, those kinds of things. And so that was the groundwork for saying, you're going to create this task that applies an idea related to social justice to your content, but students are going to develop some personal skills along the way as well. You're going to put that in an authentic context, a real world context. Where would people use these skills? What are the situations they might use them in? Develop an essential question and offer opportunities for student choice and voice. So as you listen to the examples, listen for these things. You'll see all of them sort of woven throughout in different ways. After we had the end point, begin with the end in mind, we created performance scales, and this was new to most teachers. So we said, how can we break down the learning needed at the top of this scale so that we have a learning progression of formative assessments that lead up to that PBA? And we applied depth of knowledge to that. What are the foundations of this? How do we build on that? And how do we get to that rich, deep thinking task? And then the rubrics. This was a stretch for a lot of people, because we tried to build rubrics that described a learning progression that mirrored that performance scale, that didn't have a lot of negative or vague language like most rubrics now have. So that was a piece of it. And then how do we build in peer assessment and self-reflections? And so you'll hear some of that in the examples that we see and hear tonight. Next slide. I'll just stop for a minute. If anyone has a question about the development process, they could direct them to me. About the micro-credentialing, they could direct them to Ginger. And if you want to put those questions in the chat, that will be fine, and we can respond to them as we go through. From a district perspective, if you have questions about how would you set something like this up, you might direct a question to Sanjanita. Next slide. So, drum roll, now for the showcase. What we'd like to do is throughout the showcase, we're going to give you some prompts. So as you hear people talk and you want to respond to them in the chat, here's just some possible prompts. Something you wonder about as you heard them talk. Something that you saw value in or you think you could apply in your own work. So these will pop up about every 4 or 5 times. It's just to remind you, teachers would love positive feedback. So feel free to put a comment in the chat as we go. And with that, we'll start with our first teacher, Doug. It's all yours, Doug.
Oh, great. So first, I just want to say thank you, Dr. Hess. I really appreciated, for me, I came into this with this year trying something new with building student voice and building a class around this. And I really needed help in building the rubrics. That's why I put that on there. And so your feedback, even though I'm still have a long way to go, but I feel like I've made a lot of progress there. And I'm excited about using the rubrics we created next year in my class. And Sanjanita Moore, I just want to tell you, when I met you in person around, like I thought you were as kind a person, and then when I met you, you're just as kind as you seemed here. I was, and I was taken aback, right? So anyway, and I really enjoyed having the chance to meet you. So anyway. Doug Barnshaw, I'm the social studies department chair at Run Lake High School. This year I taught a new class we call it Community Civics Honors. And so the overarching theme of the class was basically this idea of how do we improve our community. And so everything we did as far as strengths go was everything revolved around the student's voice. It revolved around them making decisions and them doing actions. And so overall, what we did, we had convened, we are a K through 12 district, and we had convened what we call the Round Lake Action Congress of students from elementary, middle school, and high school. And they created a set of themes for us to, guide our class of areas they wanted to see the community improve in. Those themes were the environment. They wanted to see the community improve in celebrating the people in our community. They wanted to see more leadership and enrichment ideas, opportunities for our youth. And they wanted to see the relationship between the police and the students and the community improve. And so they created these big overarching themes for us in the class. And then our class, which was then made up of seniors, they built out these, they then built out ideas to address these. And so each creating in small groups a project working directly with members in the community. And so it was quite an experience. And the one thing which I got out of this class, which I really, really appreciated, was this idea of really thinking about the rubrics in a different way and really thinking how more effectively to assess what was going on. I still think I got a way to go, but I have a better handle and an understanding of what was going on. So in theory, for me, my strengths obviously were all around just student voice, student engagement, students at the center of everything. They really drove the class, and I was the facilitator, and the rubric process is really going to help me with the feedback in working with students in the future. So that's a general overview.
Thanks, Doug. And feel free to put something in the chat. If you want to respond to Doug or ask him a question, that would be great. And we'll move to the next teacher. Kimberly. Are you on, Kimberly?
I don't think she's in yet.
Okay.
So the only thing I know is we had a meeting after school, so I don't know if she's still in that meeting.
Oh, okay.
But
Okay.
I'm not, but I see she filled out her slides, so I would think, yeah. I thought I saw her today, but
Yeah, okay. We can come back to hers. You can see very different from Doug's, where hers is embedded in the English class she's teaching. Let's go to Casey.
Can I add, we have a question for Doug in the chat. Angelique says she's very inspired by the themes Doug shared and wonders if he can share the rubric.
Sure.
yeah, I think yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say we'll figure out. I'm keeping track of these because I think what Ginger did last year was we put together an article. We had links to a lot of these projects, and that's probably what we will be doing. But I'm making a note. Thank you. Maybe now we can go to Casey.
Hello, yes. So this is my second year doing this, and I really enjoyed working with Karen and Sonjanita, so thank you for that. So this is for a US history course where students had to make a reality TV show trailer based off of a topic they chose between the Gilded Age up to the Roaring 20s, trying to like pinpoint the outrageousness of the era and the extreme divide between the rich and poor. So students had full autonomy over not just like the content that they chose to integrate to the video, but like how the video would be made, like the TV show of the video, etc. One example is a student who moved to Chicago last year from Kansas who was found illegally working in a meatpacking plant, chose the jungle, and was kind of looking at the injustices committed during that era to injustices that he himself and brother went through. And then at the very end, the kids wanted to view them, and one student was like, "Miss Camp, why can't we make an Oscar award show for all of our trailers?" So I said, sure. So they decided the award topics such as like best screenplay, best script, best video editing, and things like that, just as a fun way to celebrate everyone and their work. And basically the skills that were assessed was oral presentation, where kids would be presenting their trailer along with audio in it, multimedia and communication, so their actual video, the editing, things like that, which I'm amazed with the skill they have compared to me. And then the integration of evidence. So what evidence they carefully selected to then blend into the actual video. And they utilize skills that were assessed in the previous unit to help build up the type of evidence they chose for their trailers, and then how they blended it in seamlessly into their actual trailers. So that's kind of my project in a nutshell.
Thanks, Casey. You'll see the products are very different. Already we see a big difference. Yeah, the students are being asked to collect evidence of learning. So another social studies, a little bit different. Let's go to Adam.
Hi, everyone. First off, I just want to say thank you to Dr. Hess, Sanjanita, and Ginger. Appreciate everything. I learned a lot from all of you this year. So I'm Adam. I teach at Ridgewood Community High School. I am a special ed teacher. I co-teach mostly with English and history. So my focus was on my junior level course, which is an American experience that blends English and history together. So the name of my task was the New Deal. The essential question that I chose to focus on. There were a few, but I think this was my most essential question. Is if there was a New Deal today, what would it encompass, and how could it positively or negatively impact current society and government? So a short overview, you begin students analyzing FDR's New Deal, the effects that had on society. Students then take this knowledge and apply it to our modern day society. What are the problems that we face today? And is it finally time for us to develop a New Deal for the American people? So the final project is them choosing whatever medium they want to, express whether or not they think it's time for a New Deal, and what their programs would encompass, how they would help the American people. So the competencies that I chose, I'm very lucky. The school that I'm at, we're already doing competency, but it's in the beginning ages. So I had some templates to follow. I just kind of edited them a little bit and made them fit more towards my project. So engaging as a global citizen, so demonstrating understanding of historical outcomes, examining social, economic, natural issues. And then finally, my adaptive competency is goal setting and planning. So the whole way, especially when working with SPED students, you need very concrete steps of when things are going to be accomplished. Big fan of calendars in my classroom and setting goals and when things need to be done by. So that's my overview. But I think my biggest strength of this PBA is, and I'm a huge, any lesson that I do, whether it's from the early 1600s, 1700s, I try to apply that to modern day, and what the legacy and impacts of whatever it is that we're studying still affects us to this day, negative or positive. So students can get creative, coming up with new programs to address the growing issues of inequality, display their programs however they choose. And it's kind of like a small intro, a very brief intro into policy making and, caring for your fellow citizens. So that's what I would say about mine.
Thanks, Adam. And you'll notice this is part of his rubric. He's assessing them on being a global citizen, engaging, and you see the I can statement. So that was part of the rubric work. Like, how do you really connect this in a meaningful way to the learning? And you see the adaptive competency. The first two are the social studies competencies. Nice. And make sure you read notes in the chat, Adam, because a few people are making some comments. Yeah, making connections. So don't forget to put something in the chat as we move to the next person. Anna. Anna is a biology teacher. She was tutoring, and I don't know if she's on. Anna, are you on?
Yes, she's here. I
Okay,
see
good.
you're unmuted, but we can't hear you, Anna. Anna Maria, sorry. Maybe she's having some technical difficulties because she is
How
here.
about now? Can you hear me
Oh,
now?
now we can hear you. There you
Oh,
are.
great.
There you
Okay.
are.
Okay, all right. So yeah, so my name is Anna Maria Vites, and I work at Northside College Prep High School in the city. It's a CPS school. So, and this project was for honors bio, which we teach in 11th grade. So the name of the performance task, I give it lactose intolerance, and in our school cafeteria, really. So the idea came from from me, because I became lactose intolerant with age, but so I brought it up, and I asked them to survey their homes and, relatives, neighbors, and find out a little bit of where they came from, their age, and what was bothering them, the milk or the cheese or everything. So out of that, they came up with a interesting set of data. So that brought up a discussion about milk in the cafeteria, and that their lunches is mostly milk, and a lot of them do not digest milk well. So I was like, oh, this is an interesting project. We're serving milk in the cafeterias. So I brought up the fact that, traditionally we have been serving milks in the cafeterias, and it's really not representing, right, our population anymore. So, and we explored now because I'm a biology teacher, we explored the science of it. And in the science of it, we have, it's missing a few things, but one of the choices is the soft drinks in the cafeteria, right? So are all groups represented at our school and in the choices? And the second one is, how do you bring awareness? So it's not just, I don't like milk, or, it's actually a physiological and genetic, right, issue, because it comes through generations. And one of the things they learned is that the norm is to not be able to tolerate milk, because there's no reason for us to be drinking milk in reality, as animals like cats and dogs, but there's this mutation. So that's the science part of it, and the content based, and what regulates that. And we talk about epigenetics.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Did it again?
Yeah, just press them all. There's 3 of them. All right, so the relevance comes from that study that they did at their home, right? And they're realizing that they themselves are, and classmates are being impacted by the choices in the cafeteria. So, and then the science content was basically the evidence, and the project is to prepare, and I don't think we quite got there, but to prepare a presentation or a pamphlet or a slideshow to give science evidence that actually justifies maybe the changes in the demographics and groups. So if you could go to the next slide, this is the first brainstorming part that they had. This is right after they surveyed their houses, and they kind of moved the slides. I asked a couple of students to help me with that, and they gave them different kind of topics of what people were wondering about. So it comes out the regional information and where they come from and what happens with aging, and that's epigenetics, and then the genetics is at the unit. And then, bringing changes is basically what the project is about. And I think I have one more slide. Do I have one more slide? I think that's it. No,
No, that was it. But you can add anything else you'd like to.
yeah. So for me, one of the interesting, I guess for me, it was interesting to see that it matched a lot of what, we were doing in this cohort. And it's like, it kind of helped me create the thread of going through, revisiting the topic in different units and kind of building information and trying to integrate those two to make it a project-based experience. So they got really interested in it and made it very relevant. And the other part that I learned the most is how to develop the rubric, and having the basically the competencies of collaboration and reaching out, in addition to the academic rubrics, the content-based rubrics. That I think that was very eye-opening to me.
Yeah, and I will add that Anna Maria did something unique with her rubrics. She had a place for the student reflection so that students would score themselves and say what they thought their evidence was, as well as she could actually give them a rating on the evidence that they produced. And so she combined those two ideas. Yeah, and I'm seeing great connections with social justice and the daily diet. Our science teachers seem to take that kind of approach. You'll hear a couple more like that. So yeah, thank you for those comments.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so
A couple other ones that I found interesting. Lori from Aurora Institute is saying she's wondering if they presented to cafeteria staff, and I'm thinking this might be good for admin to know as well. And then Lauren.
Yes. I don't think we are getting there. We're closing the school year,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
I think the pacing of it is going to be different next year for sure.
Yeah.
I think the pacing would be it would have to be very different. But I have like these pieces that I feel like I can connect them better, to flow better as a thread through the school year.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for listening.
Lauren, another science guy.
Hello, everyone. Hi, my name is Lauren Dunning. I am a AP Biology and Chemistry instructor at Gwendolyn Brooks College Preparatory Academy on the far south side of Chicago. So my PBA is centered around sophomore chemistry. One of the things that we find really difficult every year when we teach chemistry is the fact that it has so much math in it, and students aren't, necessarily prepared for that. What we find is that when we teach stoichiometry, students are a little bit taken aback because it's the introduction of these new units that they've never heard of before, these units of measurement. So a mole and molecules. And so, ever since kindergarten, they've learned what a gram is and what a milliliter is and things like that. But this introduction, the first time that they're 10th graders of this mole concept, it could be very jarring. So that's one thing that we find, that really holds our students back. And another thing that we find is that because stoichiometry, this mathematical chemistry, is interlaced throughout all of the skills throughout the year in chemistry, we find that a lot that the science can be so disconnected from cultural relevance. And so this PBA is centered around the idea that students will use this math in chemistry. They will, there's a lot of student choice in here where students choose different types of gum, and they take the mass of the gum before they chew it, and then they chew the gum, and then they take the mass after. And the amount of sugar that, how the difference in the masses before and after is because of the sugar that they've consumed. And so basically they figure out, Trident gum has 3 grams of sugar in every piece. Bubblicious has 7 grams of sugar in every piece. And then they use the stoichiometry to convert the grams of sugar into molecules of sugar. So that is the skills part of this. And what's really interesting about this PBA is that then students create a campaign to let everyone know, these are the dangers of chewing gum is it's a popular treat for everyone, but it can have a lot of sugar in there, and it could lead to some dangerous outcomes. And so they create this campaign to let everyone know about healthier options based on the 5 pieces of gum that they have tested and what could be some healthier alternatives. Some of the strengths of this PBA, I would say, are the application, the skills-based, the stoichiometry, the integration of the skills, social awareness, and just, student voice, students being able to choose the modality in which they present. Do they want to use a Prezi? Do they want to create a podcast? Do they want to create, a regular PowerPoint, things like that. So that is, that's the chemistry PBA.
Great, thank you. So you're hearing a lot, I hope you're hearing a lot of choice and voice and real world relevance. Thanks, Lauren. Make sure you read those comments. A lot of people seeing some good stuff. So you'll notice we see 2 names on this next slide. Some people work together with a partner. And so we have Latoya and Angelica who work together. And this was interesting because they're preparing kids for something in the future. So Latoya and Angelica.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So our school is actually a transition center. So we take students with disabilities after they graduate from their traditional high schools. So after students leave us, they're getting ready to go into the workplace or just into their community in general. So we focus on independent living. We focus on teaching them vocational skills, those types of things. And our PBA was actually rooted in the need for that continuum of support for students with disabilities after they leave school. And what we have found is that most people don't know that from the age of 3 years old, once your student or your child is diagnosed with a disability, that you can be enrolled on PUNS. And PUNS does take a while. It takes a number of years, maybe 8 to 10 years, in order for a student's name to be pulled. But once their name is pulled off that list and they start receiving funding, this lasts for the rest of their lives. So you don't have to do it anymore, but most people don't know that. And there's just this huge disparity. We have a number of the world of special ed is like everything else. It's not a perfect science. And there really is not any real data that really exists. So what we have, the data that we had to go off of was the data of the number of students who are enrolled in our school over, and I think I did 4 years. The number of students who came to us already enrolled on PUNS. And there was a very, very small number of students who already were. There were a large number of students who parents had no idea what it was. They didn't start the process. They started the process and stopped that continuum, because that's another thing. There's just a lot of little pieces that go along with that. So our goal with this was to teach our students what PUNS is. So explain to them what that process is, and really in about as easy for them to understand way as we could possibly, because all of our students are 18 to 22 years old. So at this point, they're learning to advocate for themselves. They have to be leaders in their own lives and kind of give them some ownership of that whole process. So we want to teach them what that is, all the steps that they need to go through in order for them to be put on PUNS, be pulled off of PUNS, decide what services they would need for themselves to be successful in the future. And then after we teach them that, our goal is going to then have them to create a PSA on PUNS. So students are going to, in computer science, because that's what I teach, they're going to be making flyers, they're going to make videos, anything and everything that we can do to get awareness of PUNS and the need for students to be enrolled as soon as possible at that age of 3, so that hopefully in a few years from now, when we start looking at our data, we'll see more and more students coming in already enrolled in PUNS. So if the truth is, if our students, I feel like most of them, if they understand exactly what impact this would have on their lives, or what impact they could potentially have on their lives, that they would be a little bit more, they would advocate more for themselves, so that they are sure to get their needs met. Let me see what else. So we came up with a rubric, and what we're going to do for our students, because again, they're students with disabilities. According to the rubric, our highest score goes from a 4 to a 1. Students at a 4 are going to be those students who understand everything that we taught and are able to explain that to other students and to other people in general, and be able to get that message out. Students who would score a 3 are students who are just understanding for themselves, but can't yet explain it to other people. And 2 would be students who need additional support doing that. And then a 1, those would be students who need like some materials, additional time for them to be able to explain themselves and to get their point across.
So yeah, it's a unique, I love their approach to the rubric. It's appropriate for the population, but it's real world. It's very meaningful to these students. And the idea is if you can teach someone else, then you do understand it. So nice job on making it relevant to your student population. Everybody asks, well, can kids with disabilities do competency-based performance tasks? If they're appropriate for those students, absolutely. Okay, we have another group, Kim and her team. I'll just turn it over to whoever wants to describe their project.
Okay, so I'll start off, and then my team members, Ms. Kirksey, Ms. Griffin, and Ms. Lake will chime in. So this is our PBA we did as a school, and we really, really love the process of having our students do it. Just a quick overview. It was focused on social entrepreneurship. So a lot of our students, you know, we have a very special school environment. We're Chicago Public Schools, but we're contracted within Department of Correction. So our students are incarcerated at the Cook County Jail. And so one of the ideas that we took, which we thought was creative, is York is a Chicago public school, and it's contracted and it provides them educational services. So we had our students kind of shift through a problem solving approach and said, well, let's look at all of the programs that can help with, you know, preventing recidivism and also helping detainees with rehabilitation. And so that's where our PBA started. And our essential question focused on how can inquiry-based research help tackle those complex questions and problems that, you know, regarding mass incarceration and the issue of recidivism. And so the overview was that students would, you know, identify, see a problem that's going on either within their tiers or even just seeing treatment by officers or even seeing it on an executive level within Department of Correction, and then ultimately see themselves as entrepreneurs. So see themselves as these professionals that are coming in to problem solve. And you know, so then they would have to role play in the mindset that we've already gained a contract through Department of Correction, very similar to how York Alternative High School is, or York High School. And so if you look below, examples of our PBAs include, so these are actual students that have done this, and these are their business logos. So I'm going to try to give a little snippet of overview, and then I'll have the rest of the team members kind of just explain their perspective as well. So maybe just for time's sake, if you guys want, I can go through all of these logos, but I'll just, let's say, go over 3. So the first one you see, you'll look, there's faces and they're behind bars, and it says motto, which stands for mind outside. What is it? I'm sorry. It stands for mind on the outside. And what our student for privacy purposes, I won't disclose the name. His focus was on detainees' minds kind of thinking outside of the box. And, it's helping those individuals who struggle with executive functioning, also psychiatric issues. So it's kind of like a middle point that there's two parts to this business. The one part is where they need mental health screening. And then the second part is kind of more of a transitional phase. The second one is OHF, which is Outlook Humane Facility, which is pretty much contracted to create a more humane prison, which focuses on the fact that, the architectural design, the interior design of prisons are set to kind of keep them in the mindset, detainees in the mindset of being more criminalized than rehabilitation. So not only would it focus on the interior aspect, but also more of cultivating more programs. So this project as social entrepreneurs that they focused on was a bit more broad. And ultimately, both of these, what I liked was that their goal was thinking of themselves as entrepreneurs that would ultimately gain contracts with multiple prisons and create something larger. Homeless House and then DW Life Coaching, which is development and wealth, were more focused on transitional. So when detainees or inmates went out of the prison system into the community, would get the assistance they need. Bullies for Detainees was really, really awesome because it focused on providing kind of a mental health dog, a service dog, or a pet that detainees would have. And this was actually a program already within the Department of Corrections. So what's so fascinating about this student is that they took it to the next level where they actually started to incorporate more like dog training programs, kind of dog daycare, and kind of creating it in a mindset of when you love an animal and you're, that sense of altruism where you give back to something and you feel better. We Pour Transportation, Change for the Better, both are transitional programs that are focused on vocational career preparedness after they get into the community. And then Ministry Therapy, also focused on more of ministry services, but more in a therapeutic lens. And then the music production is also another outlet that they had. I'm gonna let the rest of my team members also speak. So there's a lot more programs, but I'll just let the rest of my team members chime in as well to kind of answer the fundamental questions stated above.
Good afternoon, I'm Ms. Kirksey. So I'm a math teacher at York, and math wasn't totally incorporated this year, but how, as we move forward with this PBA design, we want to get more into data. But what I took away from doing this was, first of all, how the students, they had student voice and student choice. They chose what their passion was going to be as it related to what social injustice that they wanted to tackle. They created their own logos, all of these logos that's on the screen, they created them. So they were just so excited, like, oh, look at my logo, look what I created. So just excitement of them themselves creating something, not the teacher giving them this, fill this out, and there we go. And, coming up with their own colors. So it's taking this to real world. I mean, then this helps them as it relates to web designs, even the social justice of how do you, solve problem solving. Clearly, maybe there have been some choices that problems could have been solved in a better way. So now this opens their mind to thinking, okay, this is how we could solve problems. This is first, let me face the problem. And then how do I bring in other stakeholders with the problem as opposed to, like we see, put down the guns, was, very passionate. So I liked how I love the logos. I just loved how they just was thinking of these different things that they wanted to, speak about. So that's the part I took on. Ms. Griffin can take it from there.
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. So Ms. Lake and I are in Division 6. So we're in a different division from Ms. Kirksey and Ms. Niaz. But we were able to bring all this into focus in our after-school programming. We have a program called the Investment Club, And we were trying to figure out how can we bring these workforce skills into and make them real world connections within the classroom setting. Some of our students, when they do leave the Department of Corrections, they may get out on house arrest. So with our investment club, one of the things we focus on is entrepreneurial mindsets and different types of programs that they can do while they're at home on house arrest. So this whole project was really brought light to our students. And one of the things that we were able to find out is that our students have all of these great ideas and they want to apply them, but they just needed a platform to basically show their voice and get their ideas out. And it was basically inspirational for them. So we kind of just worked with the entire project in our after school programming in our investment club. And we were very, we were gratified by their ideas and it all worked out. So that is pretty much all for Ms. Lake and myself.
I just wanted to add, thank you, Ms. Griffin. I wanted to add, I heard Ms. Kirksey say something about problem solving, and I think that's probably the biggest takeaway for me. I know that with Ms. Griffin's after school program, her focus is financial literacy. Mine is just basically enhancing literacy for those students who do not know how to read. And so one of the things that I thought about is that every problem has a solution. I also think about the students that we serve. Often they talk about wanting to be successful, but maybe not necessarily having a clear pathway to success. And so in having these discussions, I think it authenticates their learning. I think it empowers them. And this entire project, I think, with consistency, it has the potential to change the trajectory of their lives. So I'm very inspired by this, and I think our students were inspired as well.
Just
One
hearing
more
you,
thing.
I was going to say, just
I'm-
hearing you talk about the inspired students is gives me chills. It's great what you're doing. Did you want to add one last thing?
I wanted to just add one more thing,
Sure.
just the perception with the Pink Group, the project, the Outlook Humane Facility. One of the things I always tell people who ask about our school and, being inside of a detention center, when you come into our classrooms, and I can definitely say this about Ms. Kirksey's classroom. Well, I could say it about all of my classrooms, but Ms. Kirksey in particular with the math background, there is nothing that I can not figure out in her classroom as far as the decorations, as far as the setup. Our classrooms are a whole different atmosphere for our students. They enjoy coming and it promotes learning. It promotes student voice. It promotes a different type of atmosphere when they come into our classroom and we're doing activities such as this, because it takes them away from the tier into a whole different setting. And I always think about with Ms. Kirksey, she has these fish, she had it in her classroom and it was just so calming and soothing, but it all related to math. So I think when you talk about the projects, they put a lot into their thinking of if facilities look different, and have a different atmosphere, it can be more engaging to everyone, including the general population and not just our students.
Yeah, amen. Environment. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's my watch going off. I'm sorry.
No, well, we all know that the learning environment is important, but it's especially important with the population you're working with. Wow. And those logos, I would agree with Doug. Those logos are amazing. I didn't even realize that's what it was on your slide till you started to talk. Like, wow, they're very creative. Thank you. Let's go to the next one. Gina?
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Gina.
My name is Gina and I am from Ridgewood, District 234, and I'm currently a special ed teacher teaching science and transitional skills. So I found out recently I will not be teaching science next year. So I have started trying this project because I did wanted to give it a shot because I'll be teaching English next year. But the name of my project is Mythbusters, and there's a couple essential questions that we go through, but the essential question that I presented to the students is, how do we know what sources are credible and what research or data is valid? And the overview of the project is that we were able to go through the scientific method and utilize that method to solve everyday real world problems. But aside from those everyday real world problems, they could also investigate some topics that are interesting to their everyday lives. So I would say the strengths of my project is that I really stressed them focusing on something that they're really passionate about. So I really highlighted that there was student voice and choice, and they were also able to present in various different outlets. So a majority of the students did use slides just because it was most convenient to them, but some did opt to use a presentation with voiceovers and short video clips. Which I really did like that because I think it enhanced a creative outlook for them to show what they learned and highlight, what they're most comfortable with while they were presenting. And then finally, we are a school that is competency based, and we're slowly starting to integrate that into our special education classes. So recently I was able to work with a small group of teachers at the school to tweak our current competencies and really highlight the strengths of our students and go off of that a little bit more. So we're really focusing on where our students are at and hopefully pushing them up that scale. So if you actually, we'll stay on this slide for a second, but this rubrics are on a scale of 4. We grade on a scale of 6. However, this project is for students at the sophomore level. So if they make it to that level 2, that's what my goal is for the students that I'm currently working with, 2s and 3s. And if you can go to the next slide. Oh,
One more
maybe. Oh,
Nope.
it might
Okay.
be an older version. Or I might have added it in too late, but currently my two I think most creative projects and like projects that I think are really highlighting students' interests is one that focuses on tattoos, and she's researching a myth that if tattoos are more painful or less painful in specific parts of the body. And the other one, she's a bit of a foodie, so she's researching if taste correlates with our brain and flavors. So they came up with some creative hooks for their presentation, and they're having a lot of fun with it, which I definitely like the last project because we're going to be doing a taste test, which is kind of nice. And then also, I would just also like to thank Ginger, Dr. Hess, and Sanjanita. It's been really incredible working with you. I've learned quite a bit, and I've been able to already apply that to the rest of the school. So it's been very rewarding for me.
Great. What you probably don't realize is that we always learn from you as well. So it's mutual. Thank you, Gina.
Thank you.
I think maybe Irene might be next.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
My name's Irene Metropolis. I'm a teacher at Disney 2 Magnet High School. I teach 10th grade social studies, specifically world studies and AP human geography. The PBA that I designed is for my world studies class. It's titled The Single Story of Africa. And the whole kind of premise of the unit is that we're exploring how African history is typically taught from a Eurocentric perspective. And it typically has to do with topics like slavery, the scramble for Africa, disease, and just really negative topics. And what students literally uncover throughout the course of this unit is that the history of Africa is actually much, much, much more than that. And that actually much of medieval Europe and the Western world, their economies were nourished by African gold. So it's a really, really cool project in that you just constantly see a lot of aha moments and kids, connecting the dots, even from, prior experiences in history classes. And it's cool because I use a whole lot of different, both primary and secondary sources. There's even this like mini documentary that just came out on Netflix that goes through the process of this like artist trying to locate these ancient manuscripts that were stolen from the libraries of Timbuktu. And the students get real heated and passionate when they find out that, or when they actually start to realize that, when you erase a person's history and when you dehumanize a group of people, then they're easier to control and the narrative is much easier to spin. So I don't know if I mentioned the whole unit is kind of framed around a TED talk that Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie gave several years ago called The Single Story. And basically what she says is that single stories are similar to stereotypes, but what they do is they make the one story the only story. So the whole premise of the project is students try to delineate single stories that they might have heard from about Africa in the past and prove that they're limited by connecting them to something that they learned about throughout the course of the unit. And then students have a menu of options to show their learning. For our fantastic writers that, love to share their opinions through written word, they have the option to do an op-ed piece. We have our podcasters that make podcasts. We even have this really cool option that a lot of kids were really drawn to. We have an unboxing, a TikTok unboxing, and some of the kids took it really literally and filled up boxes with sand and literally had an unburying of African history, because we use this metaphor all the time that it's been buried deep within the sand of the Sahara Desert. So it's just been really cool to see the kids get so creative and so passionate. And it really sparks a lot of interest. And it also sparks a lot of passion because they start to realize, well, wait, there isn't just one history. There's actually several different histories. And why are we only taught this one history? So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's the premise of it. And if there are any questions or comments, I'd love to take a look at the chat.
Great. Thank you, Irene. It's like every one of these is a cool project. I just have to say. Let's, I think we have about maybe 2 or 3 more people. Oh, 4 people. Jacqueline.
Hi, everyone. I apologize. I am driving home. I had a meeting with my principal that went quite late today. But I am happy to give you kind of the overview from here. So my PBA was a little bit unique in that I am not a teacher. I am a counselor. I have a background in teaching English. I taught English actually for the majority of my career, but switched over into counseling 5 years ago. And our counseling outcomes are often attached to either grade improvement, social emotional skill development that usually will look at behavioral data to monitor the impact of those standards, and then post-secondary success. So those typically are sort of our 3 metrics, but this project I really enjoyed because I was able to kind of merge my teaching background with my counseling background and make it more skills focused. So this PBA was designed for a very specific group of students. This is a group of freshman girls that have just been really struggling behaviorally. They're on the brink of involvement with the juvenile justice system. Some have been involved throughout the course of this school year, kind of back and forth. And so it's a very niched population. But that was where we were seeing the most need throughout the year this year. So this entire PBA is really focused around developing social skills. There is some overlap with literacy skills. So things like seeing how multiple perspectives can impact a story. There's a portion of the activities leading up to the PBA where we break down stories that we've heard in childhood and what things look like from the other side. And I ask them to identify the heroes and the villains in those stories. And then we do like the very old Three Little Pigs and then the story from the wolf side. But then use that to think about like, who are the heroes and the villains in your life and what might the story look like from the other side. And so that's kind of like the jumping point. That's actually the first lesson. And this is a group that meets weekly. And then by the end of it, we're working on building skills aligned with self-reflection, empathy, understanding how to communicate in ways that essentially de-escalate conflict rather than escalating conflict. So I'm using the CCSS speaking and listening standards to kind of build in that piece, as well as the key adaptive competencies. So there's kind of a lot of overlap with the speaking and listening standards and then the key adaptive competencies. So I developed, and I don't have these linked in here, but I developed, I'm trying to, let me pull over real quick, actually. This is not going to be conducive to driving. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So yeah, so I developed a little like template for, it kind of breaks down the speaking and listening standards into question stems. So I want them to learn to agree with people and to do it in a way that like validates the person who was originally speaking. And then also to make connections, respectfully challenge or disagree, clarify or verify information, and practice active listening. And again, all of this language comes from the speaking and listening standards, but then each of those subcategories is broken into a stem, a sentence stem, essentially. So ultimately, the PBA, after we've done, these activities where we're practicing using this language and personal reflection and sharing experiences, then in the PBAs, they're journaling throughout this entire process. And then at the end, they'll select their favorite journal writings and either refine them to make them vignettes about their lives or turn them into a poem. And I have a whole bunch of like poetry templates that students can choose from if they want to kind of transfer their work. And so ultimately, I want this to be something that they're proud of, something that has, enabled them to really reflect a little bit more deeply on their own lives and their own experiences, and hopefully also recognize that other people in this group also have had probably some similar experiences. And as much as they've been at odds with each other throughout the year, a lot of times ultimately when they can kind of see each other's humanity, things settle and they're able to recognize that really there's not really a reason for this continuous conflict. So I'm less concerned about the quality of the poetry and more concerned about, those interactions along the way. And yeah.
Wow.
So I really appreciated the feedback. And this was kind of, like I said, an interesting lift for me because it is different. But it was enjoyable to, be part of a group with so many people that had, unique experiences, and hearing from all of you and the way that you're framing things was really thought provoking. So I appreciate the feedback and the support.
Great. Thanks, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
Michael.
Hello, my name is Michael Shores. I teach at Brooks College Prep, and I was kind of hoping I'd go first because now I feel I have to compete with all these great PBAs that we already heard. No, I'll give it a shot. All right. This is my second year. Last year, my design was kind of a little more open in terms of students kind of pick, any issue that they were kind of interested in, wanted to explore. This year, I wanted to be a little more focused because it kind of compare the two. And this year, my design is based on exploring the rise in crime throughout the neighborhoods in Chicago. I picked this because this was, it's been in the media a lot, and it played a huge role in the mayoral election. So I thought, something out there that was kind of like current would be nice to explore. And I came up with the PBA also. I basically picked, I'm a math teacher, I basically picked one of the harder concepts to teach mathematically, and not only to teach, but for students to understand and to apply. And that's the big issue, to be able to apply it. So I picked rates, so mathematical rates. We've been exploring rates, and I teach calculus. And it's so important because calculus is actually built on rates. So it's the foundation. So it's really important that students kind of understand this idea. So the design is based on, so students are going to research and choose two communities. And there's a lot of openness on what communities or neighborhoods they would like to research. It either could be their own personal neighborhood, or our school here, Roseland, or any just a neighborhood they've always kind of wondered about in terms of crime or the community experience there. So now the two communities, the conditions were that they had to have a similar median income, and the two communities would have to have different crime rates. So the idea is to kind of eliminate this idea of income, because I think it's pretty well proven that income plays a big role in crime and a lot of other social inequalities. So with that being said, so now they've kind of found two communities to research that had different rates, and the other open choice was that how they define crime, because I wanted to kind of them to be able to relate to. They had a wide range, either violent crimes, nonviolent crimes. I was fortunate. We're kind of in the middle of doing a little trial now with it, and it's going really well. And I noticed a lot of students are kind of picking more kind of property crimes and stuff, and maybe they have more connections with that. But I do know we have students here that also have, unfortunately, been, directly related to violent crimes. Now the idea with the research to look for factors that could explain why one community was more successful in terms of, or safer in terms of crime rates. Some of the great questions already that have come out. And it's great when, I really enjoy this because a lot of times I have to come up with questions to ask the students. And I notice when I do this, the students are the ones asking the questions. And it's not so much that I'm answering the questions, that they're answering and exploring it. And it's more of like a community type response to it, and just, the more academic was about just, what is a rate, how to construct it. Why can't, like, so if you're comparing two communities, why can't you just compare the number of incidences? So maybe of robberies, and the importance of that, it has to be a rate. And then also a cool thing that's kind of come out is that, students are questioning where they're getting their sources or their information, because it's a data project. The main source is online. And, there was cool things we already saw. Some of the websites you can go to will give like a community or neighborhood a letter grade. And we found a couple incidences now where a community had a higher letter grade, but they had also higher crime when the students did their own research and came up with their own rates. So this idea of trust is kind of coming up, and I've heard students talking about, what websites would be more trustworthy. So so that's really coming out. And kind of lastly, the whole personal connection with it, I've really enjoyed. And maybe it's because I teach math and I don't hear a lot of it, and so it's really really love connecting with my students in this way. And during this activity, the trial run, I've heard things like students kind of like giving testimony about how, one student was talking about how their mom keeps at them about, making sure you lock the door, bolt lock the door, and how important that is as soon as she leaves. Multiple kind of, one student was talking about how there's been a lot of drunk driving incidents and, accidents in front of the house. And that's kind of, it can be scary. And then, a lot of times too, about gunshots, kind of always hearing gunshots in the past. So, when I do something like this, the students hide some of this stuff really well. And and you don't really get to see it until, we do work on things like this. So, I really feel like a really closer connection when I hear students and, through this activity. And there's not a lot of direction, that I'm giving. The students are really taking it on their own. And just one last kind of, shout out to the rubric, and thank you guys for all your help. And you could really tell, like, when a well-crafted rubric, you don't have to say much. The students really kind of take off on it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great quote about the rubric, Michael. Thank you.
Michael, Angelique is asking, did the students collaborate or share their data in any way? And then Doug is asking, for your students, was the crime data hard to find?
Yeah, the sharing is now at the end in a couple days. I think Monday and Tuesday, students are going to give presentations in class to kind of share what they came up with in their data. So far for me, I've just been kind of off to the side, just listening and, kind of interjecting with some questions, and we've been talking. And the cool thing is the math is just kind of like happening, like I'm not creating worksheets and stuff that, how to determine, appropriate rates. The common units are like so many incidents per 10,000 people or 100,000, what that means. And the cool thing is it's just kind of coming out, and I'm just kind of addressing it as we go. So yeah, that students will be sharing with each other soon. And the data is there. It's not that hard to find because there's a lot of websites, but like I was saying, questioning, the data, I think, is the big thing, and having students come up with their own rates.
That's a great, Michael. Now I think we might have two more people. Is Kimberly on now? Yours was one of the first. We have to go way back to the beginning. And then I'm wondering.
Don't see Kim Bots on, so
No?
maybe she
Okay.
had a
Okay.
conflict or something.
Okay, and then Lisa is the other one, and we somehow don't have her slide, but Lisa, would you like to just share yours before we wrap up? I see that you're on, so that's great.
Yeah, I think she's in a student meeting, but wanted
Oh,
to kind of
okay.
listen in.
Okay, all
But I
right.
don't know if this is the part where she's listening or talking in her meeting now. So
Okay, all right. So you can see that everybody's had conflicts throughout this, so it's kind of amazing we got this far. I've been impressed. I agree, Ginger's comment that it would be good to have a blog to go along with the recording. I think other teachers would be really interested in hearing about your projects. I'll turn it back over to maybe Ginger.
But as Karen said, so I will definitely post this recording and the deck with your permission. Please let me know if you are comfortable with me posting the deck, but I will do that along with a quick blog that will sort of address some of the really, really great stuff, all the such innovative and inspiring projects that you all have been doing. I remember last year feeling like I was so blown away by how innovative it all was. And I thought, well, that was just sort of a one-off, but then here we are again with just another set of even more inspiring pieces. So just a few next steps for those of you in the program. Complete the PBA design cohort end of program survey. I will send your micro-credentialing information soon. And then I think for CPS, stipends will be processed soon. Any other follow-ups from you, Sanjanita or Karen?
Well, I had a thought that so many people would like to see some of the rubrics. I can go in and maybe after each person's slide, if it's okay with you, I'll just do a screenshot of a sampling of your rubrics. Probably won't be the full rubrics, but to kind of get a flavor of how you assess these. I think everybody would love to see what everybody else did. There were unique aspects of all these. So if people are okay with that, I'll go through and I'll just add a rubric slide after each one. And then and eventually the recording will be available and there'll be a blog post. I think there's a couple good articles about the learning that happened in these classrooms. So kudos to all of you for hanging in there.
Yes, and I just wanted to echo everything that Ginger and Dr. Karen have been saying. So appreciative of this learning experience. I was learning kind of along with you. I was a teacher years ago and was doing this work before it was a thing. So it's just great to see the many different ways you guys are sharing and creating these experiences for your students. And please, let us know how things are going. If you're taking photos, the CBE team would love to have those for our social media. And, even just as we begin to plan for next year's professional development series, the PBA cohort and other things we're planning, we'd love to maybe tap into some of your work and have you share with some of our new teachers that will be joining on next year. So continue to keep in touch and keep us posted. Definitely want to continue the partnership and friendship we have with Ridgewood and Round Lake. So don't be strangers, everyone.
Yeah, and really take some pictures of things that are happening. It's great to have that archive. So thank you to all of you. And thank you, Ginger and Sanjanita, for doing a lot of the coordination for this, making this happen.
Karen, you're a master. You're always
definitely.
Always amazing. It's so good to see you all again.
Yes.
I'll hang out in case anybody has anything or needs anything, but please feel free to get on with the rest of your day and enjoy the weather. It's nice again. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thanks. Nice. Have a great end to your school year.